This is the quaint and historical town of Toodyay, located around 85 km northeast of Perth. One of the earliest rural towns settled in Western Australia, settled around 1836. We're going to take a look around, and then we're going to travel down what they call the Pioneer Pathway and just enjoy the countryside. The town of Toodyay was first settled around 1836, so there's lots of history here. It's one of the early rural towns. York was the earliest, and Toodyay was one of the early ones. Lots of history, lots of old buildings, including the old courthouse, post office, an old hotel, and the lockup, and which also contains the old courthouse right behind me. So we're going to take a look around. The jail cells are around 10 feet by 4 feet. They have a couple of small windows high up, and when the solid door is shut, the cell will be very dark, I would imagine. They've had some interesting guests here, including Moondine Joe, but this is no guest house. Toodyay is located on the banks of the Avon River, and it appears every road that leaves Toodyay goes over a bridge going over the Avon River. Well, at least 3 bridges anyway. We're at Jennacabine, which is just south of Goomalling, and this is the old church at Jennacabine. This is the Jennacabine Tavern. Nice looking tavern. They have a large lawned area, barbecues, motel units. Not too far out of Goomalling. Nice looking tavern. We're continuing our journey along the Pioneer Pathway, and just north of Goomalling is the Slater Homestead, built in 1856. It was used as a roadside inn at one stage, and isn't it a great building? This is Rusty the Tin Dog. Rusty was designed by students of the Dowerin High School to encourage people to stop and look and enjoy the sights of Dowerin townsite. Well, I'm stopping and looking. Now, Rusty is actually here to remember the early explorers and travellers out to the goldfields who would stop in this area at the nearby creek and camp for a day or two and rest before they moved on. Back in those days, they ate a lot of canned food, and the canned food was often referred to as tinned dog. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's often called tin dog. So Rusty here is a tin dog to remember the early explorers who camped at the nearby creek. Here's something you don't see much these days, a drive-in screen. This is the Dowerin drive-in, not operating now. It opened in 1960 and closed in 1992. The screen is still there, but the movies don't play. So we're heading into Nanning Well. We drove about 150 metres off the bitumen, and now I need to walk about 150 metres up the creek. But there's no signage, and if you didn't know where it was, you may or may not find it. So it's supposed to be just up here. These early wells, pioneer wells, were established way back in the 1860s or even earlier to assist to assist the people heading out to the goldfields, to assist the early explorers doing their exploring. In fact, in 1869, a government explorer surveyor by the name of John Forrest actually camped in this spot on one of his early expeditions. He was only 22 at that stage, and John Forrest went on to be the first Premier of Western Australia. So this is the Narning, they call it Narning Well, but it's only a soak. 3 k's back towards Gamelling is Nanning Well, which is a nice rocked up pioneer well. So Nanning Well back there, and they call this Narning Well here. So I'm not sure if there's some confusion, or maybe I'm just confused. So we shall continue. So I'm standing in Namel Catcham Reserve, about 150, 200 metres from the road intersection, and there is another pioneer well, and this one was built probably in the early 1860s. Another fine specimen, even though it's has deteriorated just a little. Okay, just to clarify, there are 3 wells on the Gamelling Wild Catcham Road. The first one is 11 k's east of Dowerin, and that is the Nanning Well. Nanning Well, as we saw, is a nice pioneer rock-lined well. 3 k's further to the east from Nanning Well is what they call Narning Well. At this stage it is nothing more than a soak, but maybe in the past it was a nicely formed up well. Now, if you go another 1 k to the east, to the intersection of the Gamelling Wild Catcham Road and the Cunderden Minivale Road into the Namel Catcham Reserve, there is a 3rd well called Namel Catcham Well, which is 140 metres northeast of the intersection. So we actually have 3 wells within 4 kilometres. The next destination on the Pioneer Pathway trip is number 2, the small town of Minnivale. Minnivale is a very small town, a couple of houses, a church and a wheat bin, but it does have a free campground with facilities and a dump point. The Minnivale baker's oven. The inside of the oven is quite large. It's be about 3 metres by 3 metres, so plenty of loaves of bread could be made in there. Wild Catcham Well, located just south of the road within the Wild Catcham Golf Course. Structures like this are more commonly referred to as tanks simply because of the shape and the size rather than a well. This one was built in 1881 for the Toodyay Shire. Correction, it was built in 1881 for the Toodyay Roads Board, as they were referred to in those days. The sign also says it was originally 60 feet deep. Now, that is very impressive, 60 feet. That would make it a well, as well as a tank. When gold was discovered in the Yilgarn area in 1887, this became a valuable water source for prospectors heading to the goldfields, and the road adjacent to the Wild Catcham Well, to this well, became known as the Goldfields Road. I'm taking the walk at Coralocking Nature Reserve. the walk will take me to another pioneer well. And as we can see, the wells are typically at the base of granite rocks, which acts as a natural catchment. Training well, nice and easy to find, immediately adjacent to the road, which back in the day would have been the Goldfields Road, 6.4 k's north of Training. A nice pioneer well, plenty of water in there, and the water doesn't look too bad either. Training well was nice and easy to find right alongside the road, but at our last stop, Coralocking Reserve, I didn't find a well. There's signs where someone has had a dig many years ago, but I did not find the well. So originally they ran a sheep station, 160,000 acres of sheep station. The price of wool dropped, gold was found, and this was on the main road to the goldfield. So they set up the inn with food, drink and accommodation, and that kept them busy for some years after that.
And that one down there is just all stone and mud. But they've tried to keep it as near as they.
This is a dam at Merredin, built in the 1890s to supply water for the steam trains heading towards the goldfields. We have another good example of utilising the granite rocks as catchment areas. There's a rock up behind this dam, and water runs off the rock into the dam. They put extra rock walls and drains in to catch the water, and this dam can hold 25 million litres of water. So when it rains, the water runs down the rock. They've built little levee banks and dug drains and all sorts to steer the water into a massive collection drain like this one in front of me, which persuades the water to run into the dam here. And back in its day, the water would be pumped into an overhead tank which sits in town adjacent to the railway station to top up the steam trains. They stopped using steam trains around 1969 when they swapped over to diesel. So right in the middle of town, next to the railway station, which of course is next to the railway track, is the water tank that was topped up from the dam and used to top up steam trains. It is a beauty with appropriate signage on top, of course. Well, we're just southwest of Merredin at Totadgin Rock, Hunt's Well number 7, another one of Hunt's Wells, built in the 1860s, mid-1860s. This one is slightly different design. It's a very narrow diameter well, rock lined. It'd only be a metre or so diameter. As you can see, the vegetation around the well is very thick, and fortunately in 2016 a group of dedicated people, the Hunt's Well Track and Explorer guys, came and cleared the well to make it much easier for everyone to locate. Well, that's it for this trip. I hope you found it interesting. We have so much more to explore, so stay tuned, and don't forget, please Like, share and subscribe.